Hundreds of thousands of Americans enraged by the man voted into office by millions of other Americans.
Now, there is a People's March plan for January, but there are concerns that the turnout will be significantly less than the Women's March. And just to give you a sense of how the approach and the energy is very different this time around, you even had on The View Whoopi Goldberg, who, of course, has been a vociferous Trump critic all of these years, saying, yeah, I'll wait and see what he does once he gets into office.
We're diving headfirst into the chaotic whirlwind that is Whoopi Goldberg's shocking, in quote, surrender to Trump. Yes, one of the loudest critics of Trump seems to be waving the white flag. This debate is full of contradictions, a lot of finger pointing, and an underlying tension that raises some real questions about the Democrat strategy, or lack thereof. We've got Whoopi, Anna Navarro, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and even a mention of Joe and Micah's whiplash-inducing Hitler-to-handshake strategy. Who's making sense, if anyone? Who's losing the plot? Democrats, probably. But let's break it all down with ruthless honesty and pauses to dissect the madness.
Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
I understand all the things you want to see him be. I understand all the things that he promised he would be and he wasn't. And now that he has been given carte blanche, I'm not going to waste a lot of time on what he might do.
But at the same
I'm gonna wait because I need to see what he will do so that I know what I'm going to do.
I'm not going to wait and see.
Let's just wait 1 second. Whoopi, a figure who spent years screaming apocalypse over Trump, is suddenly taking a wait-and-see approach. This is the same person she called out for being unpredictable and dangerous. What happened to "we've seen this before and it's a disaster"? This reeks of strategic flip-flopping, but no surprise, it's coming from Whoopi.
I mean, this guy is told that he's a retribution. He's going to be a dictator.
There's nothing to be done until you know what you're fighting. It's pissing in the wind doesn't help. You just get a wet face.
But I mean, what I'm saying is I have no false expectations that at 78 he's going to all of a sudden turn into another human being.
Well, no kidding. So why the soft tone now? If you know who he is and what he stands for, this passive rhetoric doesn't align with the condemnation you've thrown in the past. This sounds very much less like insight and more like capitulation.
And I'm not going to I spent weeks telling people that he was apocalyptic. I'm not going to change now because it's still the same man.
Not treating every single thing like
I think that's when we lose credibility.
Anna Navarro actually has a point here, but let's not pretend the entire table on The View hasn't thrived on treating every Trump controversy like doomsday. If Navarro's advocating moderation now, where was this wisdom when the hysteria dial was cranked up to 11 for years?
Well, here's the thing. You lose credibility in many different ways. If you don't know what you're talking about and you accuse him of something, then they're going to blow it back. That's why I say we need to wait and see exactly what you're going to do.
So,
we should put dramatic music like that when we start to get like heated.
Griffin can start trying to play us out to break, like, okay, y'all have been talking for a long time. All of these people being like, let's make nice because this is the new reality. And, part of that is out of a desire to suck up to power as always. And part of that is out of like this kind of fear of retribution. I think from Whoopi Goldberg's perspective, it's also her sense of like, okay, well, what we did last time didn't really work. We know what he said on the campaign trail. We know who he's putting in place and what he is planning to do. And whether it's, mass deportations or I'm in support of some tariffs, but putting tariffs across the entire economy that spikes inflation would be an utter disaster. The $2 trillion cuts from, letting Elon Musk, the richest man on the planet, basically like drive government policy and run it to his own personal benefit. And if you put the shoe on the other foot, like Republicans never approach things this way of like, oh, maybe Barack Obama and Joe Biden, maybe Kamala Harris, maybe we're going to like what they have. No, they, from the beginning, mount a forceful, clear-cut, aggressive opposition. And there's a reason why they do that.
This is dead on. Democrats have spent years shouting into the void about Trump, but have offered little in terms of clear alternatives or actionable resistance. This fire, then aim approach hasn't worked, and yet they're doubling down. It's embarrassing compared to GOP's disciplined strategy.
It's because it's politically successful.
It's pretty wild. I mean, first of all, to disentangle the layers of that cacophony from The View, it was like they were making these different arguments that weren't even against each other. Like you had Alyssa Farah Griffin on the end of the table saying, you can't treat everything like a 5-alarm fire. She was agreeing with Ana Navarro. She was like, he is the same guy, but if you treat everything like it's an emergency, people tune out. And Ana Navarro is sort of puzzled by that and saying, and same thing, she's puzzled by Whoopi Goldberg because she's been sitting at that table for years where they do treat everything as a 5-alarm fire. For the first time in my life, I am sympathizing. I am agreeing with the lovely Ana Navarro there, but the Joe and Mika point, I don't think this applies to Whoopi Goldberg, but Crystal, I was working on a story yesterday about why DC seems so quiet. I mean, the Women's March was the pinnacle of the resistance. It was, the snowball starting to roll down the hill of the resistance. And Ryan writes about this in his book, a very organic, genuinely bottom-up way. But it also, I mean, the quote-unquote resistance, the hashtag resistance, was robust. It wasn't just the Women's March. The Women's March was a powerful part of it, but everyone remembers it was so frenzied in D.C.
This is where things get truly dicey. The lack of panic isn't a sign of trust. It's a sign of defeatism. Democrats seem resigned to the fact that Trump 2.0 is inevitable, and instead of strategy, they're waving the "Let's Survive" flag. Where's the fight now, Democrats?
And they understand he's coming into to office with these off-season plans ready to go.
That's
and
right.
They're trying to avoid, needlessly, after all of this time, putting themselves in the crosshairs. It's like, okay, good luck at this point.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, there's no examination of what the resistance ended up focusing on in terms of, figuring out why it didn't work. They're sort of viewing it through the lens of, well, we were aggressively opposed to Trump last time and that didn't work. So this time maybe we should be less aggressively opposed to Trump. And it's like, well, instead of that analysis, maybe you shouldn't have indulged in this elaborate Russiagate hoax conspiracy that just turned out to not be true.
Oh, here we go. The Russiagate obsession, while juicy for cable news, just ended up being a massive distraction from the tangible failures and policies of Trump's administration. Democrats miscalculated, and now they're paying the price by scrambling for credibility.
You see a very different approach from Democratic elites, and MSNBC overall, very different approach. And I don't think that that is reflective of where a lot of the Democratic base is. And I think that's why you're seeing so many people abandon MSNBC.
What we're seeing here is a fractured response from Democrats. Whoopi's wait-and-see attitude reflects exhaustion more than strategy. The panel spends more time debating how to oppose Trump than actually opposing him. Meanwhile, Republicans stay consistent, focused, and the bottom line, Trump wins this round. Not because of brilliance, because his opposition can't figure out what they're doing. Again, no surprise, Democrats just flailing in the wind. This isn't a surrender, it's a slow, awkward collapse into irrelevance. What do you think of Whoopi's response or surrender to Trump and Democrats' overall reaction to Trump's election win? Comment below.